There is a proud tradition in the mountains of northern New Mexico to serve one's country. Veterans of this unique community were asked to share their feelings and tell their stories. These are the veterans of the Penasco Valley.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
It's just such a treat to have you all here tonight. We'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if everyone would please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce myself real briefly. My name is Cowrie Lopez, and many of you may know my husband, Gabriel Lopez, or maybe you know my father-in-law, my suegro, Esteban Lopez. He was a World War II veteran, and I know that serving in the military impacted his life and impacted the life of his family, because when he came home, you know, he, under the GI Bill, he was able to get an education and became a teacher, and that greatly impacted his children as well. I just want to say that this whole process of collecting information and meeting so many of you veterans has just been extremely touching. And one of the community members, Patricia Saccoman, she goes to the Angel Fire Vietnam Memorial every year, and she took me there, and it was a very moving experience to be there. And we saw Jose Scotty Simbolo's picture there, and we also saw the picture of Jim Martinez. there, and that got me just much more emotionally tied to this service. And my grandfather was also a veteran, and I just wanted to tell a quick story before I pass it off to the Master of Ceremonies. But my grandfather was in Korea, but he was in Korea before the Korean War. And my mother, who's here this evening, she lived in Korea before the Korean War. And my grandfather, he wanted to fight once the Korean War started because he was very familiar with that area, but they sent him back home to train troops. But I want to say that I know that each one of your stories is very different, and each one of your stories is very special and unique. And hearing them has just been a wonderful part. The whole process of creating this this service tonight has been really special. And I've heard a lot of your stories, but also Pam Fernandez has heard a lot of your stories. I also want to thank two other women, Miss Nora Duran. She came and brought me pictures of her son and her grandson and her husband, and then she said I can also go and get some of the stories and some of the pictures, so I really appreciated her help. And also, I can't end without thanking my sister-in-law, Leonora Lopez, who went visiting with me, because a lot of she's from the community, and so it was a real treat to go visit with her and visit some of their cousins and hear their stories, like Julio Rodarte and Juanito Rodarte. It was really fun to hear their stories, and I want to thank my sister-in-law for that. Anyway, without further ado, I want to introduce a good friend and a local veteran. He served from 1989 to 1995. He was in the Navy with USS Leftwich, and he trained in Illinois, Great Lakes, Illinois. He was in Pearl Harbor for 2 years, in the Persian Gulf, the Philippines, Thailand, Dubai, Bahrain, and New York City. So what an interesting mix of places to have gone, and that just is such a special thing. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome a very special person, John Duran.
Well, thank you, Kari, and thanks everyone for showing up and supporting this community effort. It's great to see a lot of folks I haven't seen in quite a long time. And before we go on, I just would like to thank the committee members that pulled all this off. And Kari obviously was one of them, Sandra Archibald, Pam Fernandez, Natalie Lopez, Nick Beeson, and Mark Martinez. So let's give them a round of applause for their community involvement. I was talking on the phone with Kari the other night, and she told me how moved she was at the willingness of everybody to share their stories and their photos and kind of pull together as a community. And so that's great to see. And so she asked me to speak, and instead of telling you about my military experience, I think I would like to tell you about what influenced me to join the military. And as a young kid, I remember sitting at my mom and dad's house under the dining room table and listening to my tios that were in the military come and share their stories with me. And it was this great sense of adventure, hearing about my tios landing on aircraft carriers and all the bases they had been on throughout their experiences and all the travel they had done. And it just sounded really exciting to me. And I think part of that sharing stories is part of our culture, right? That's one of the definitions of culture, is just the stories and the traditions and the customs passed down through generations. And so I think it was part of my DNA at a young age to want to serve my country, but also to go out and adventure and travel to some of these exotic places, and also to get some money for education. My parents weren't able to afford to send me to school, so I figured, well, we'll kill two birds with one stone. And so what does culture really mean, right? So culture is a group of people that share a common belief system, common values. It could be the music we listen to, in some cases religion, and a lot of the customs and how we live. And so that's a little bit different than identity. Culture does tie into identity. And the reason I'm talking a little bit about identity is because when you join the military, one of the first things that you do, and every vet in here can attest to, boot camp basic training, right? And so what's the purpose of boot camp basic training? It's to you know, when folks join the military, you have all this melding of cultures, people from all over the United States, in some cases the Philippine Islands, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and they all have their cultural backgrounds and their beliefs and their ties to their communities. So the idea for boot camp and basic is to remove your civilian identity from you and give you a military identity and condition you to military culture. And so that's important for military, because now you're a military community as a team going out and supporting whatever effort you're supporting during deployments. And so throughout all of my experiences and all my travels, it was kind of interesting to see some of the other cultures out there. For example, the Philippine Islands shared a lot of the customs and traditions that we did. I mean, I didn't realize it at the time, but the Spanish colonized the Philippines and named after King Philip of Spain. And so it was kind of interesting to be on the other side of the planet, hearing people talking about Los Posadas and other customs that we share here. So throughout all my military experience, I never really lost my tie to my community, and I owe that in part to my family, because they would send me care packages. And I think they wanted to make sure that I didn't forget about my home, so I would get carne seca and red chili and chicos and frijoles and things like that sent to me, just to, I think, their way of keeping me hooked, right? And so I would never forget my culture or my community. And so with that, I would just like to say, well, the other thing that I was remembering as I was asked to come share some words with you is that when I was out in the Persian Gulf, you know, one of the things that, you know, like any parent, my mom was very worried about my safety, right? Just like any of you that have children, when they leave and they go out and they adventure into the big broad world, you worry about your children's safety. And so there was a community group that pulled together for my mom to support her, and have a prayer group and all that. And so a very strong sense of community, and I'd just like to say thank you to all of you for coming out and for supporting this effort. So without further ado, do we want to do the slideshow for 5 minutes, Kari? Okay, so I guess we're going to take 5 minutes now and run through some photos that were collected by the committee. And so don't be surprised if you see your faces up there, to all the veterans. Thank you. And so at this point, I'd like to ask any other Vietnam veterans to stand up and be recognized. Thank you all for your service. Absolutely. At this point, I'd like to introduce Eagle, Sergeant Edward Eagle Rael, who is in the 9th Infantry Division, served in Vietnam from 1968 to 1969 Army. Eagle?
Well, thanks for inviting me, first of all. This is a nice gathering you got together here. And I'm glad to be here representing the Vietnam veterans. But I'd like to recognize all veterans, all the way from, World War I, World War II. It's a great honor for all these veterans. And in this little community here, Penasco, all the little communities here, there's been a lot of veterans that have served, We even have a couple of POWs that, I think we have 2 in this community here. I can't remember, it's Mascareñas from Placitas, right? Yeah, I'd like to mention him and all the World War II veterans. That was a war that was really, really detrimental to the survival of our country, because it was a bad time, and a lot of the veterans served in that war. Then later on, Korea came. I know we still have a few Korean veterans. I've seen some here. I'd like to recognize one Korean veteran from Picoris Pueblo. I'd like for him to stand. Is Joe Concello. Also, the other Korean veteran I saw here, if you don't mind standing, that Korea veteran. I know, thank you. No, both of you, thank you. The other day I was invited to go to Arroyo Seco, and they were introducing all the veterans starting from World War I. They ask anybody from World War I? No more. Then they asked World War II. Just a handful stood up, and we had a big crowd. I think there was only like 4 or 5 veterans from World War II. We met 2 veterans, one that was 105 years old from Taos Pueblo, and one that's 102 years old. So you can tell how times has changed, and there's very few of those old veterans left. So I really have a lot of respect for them, and not only the current Vietnam veterans and Iraqi, but those old veterans before they leave us. We should all thank them for giving us a free country today. So I come from a military family. I had my brother Fernando, he served in the Marines. My younger brother Alfredo Oliver Rael, as I was coming home from Vietnam, he was going in. And so we had quite a few guys from Picoris Pueblo. Kerry mentioned earlier this guy, Scotty Simbola, he actually got killed in Vietnam for being such a small community. So it touches us all, and losing a family member like that. And I know there's been other Vietnam veterans that were lost here from the Penasco, and I mean the whole area here, not only Penasco, I mean all the communities. So I'd like to, condolences to all the families that lost members like that, because they gave their life for their service for us. So I'm glad that you asked me to say a few words, but all of them, men and women that serve, a lot of times they forget about the nurses and the medics. It's not only the veterans, it takes a whole army of everyone. So everybody that participated in the military, I'd like to thank them too. So thank you for giving me a chance to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. So Eagle's given me a big hand in asking Korean veterans to stand, ask you all to stand together one more time. And we're going to, I don't know if there are any World War II veterans here. Are there? Yeah. So thank you all for your service as well. And to piggyback on some of the things Eagle was saying is that, you know, some of us join the military, we leave, but it does take a full support from the community. You know, it's I know in my experience, I never felt like I was out there alone. So, you know, great thanks to the community support as well. Let's see where we're at here. So I guess we want to just keep the slideshow going? Okay. And so I know that the committee had pulled together lots of names and lots of photos. It's definitely not a comprehensive list by any stretch of the imagination. You know, nobody was intentionally left out. So, you know, if you have other names and feel you want to recognize some of your family members that have served and they're not on the list, please feel free to say some words or to recognize them. At this point, I'd like to ask any other veterans that would like to come up and share some of their experience and talk a little bit about their service or their sense of community or culture and share with the others in the room here. Does anybody have the courage to come speak? Awesome. All right. All right, let's give it a hand for our first volunteer.
Army.
Vietnam?
1966 to 1969.
Okay. I'd like to introduce Alex Lopez from Trampas, New Mexico, served in the Army from 1966 to 1969. Thank you for coming up, Alex.
I'm going to put my hat on. I also belong to the American Legion of Post 89 in Truchas. And I just want to say a few words about the other part of the military that don't go to war and don't do the battles. The support system, which is where I was. I was stationed in Germany in 1967, 68, and 69, and we did a lot of support for the other part of the people that were actually in Vietnam. One of the things that we did a lot of maneuvers, and we secured a lot of the borders. And in 1968, those of you that recall, Russia invaded Czechoslovakia, Prague, Czechoslovakia, and I was there in a border, assisting refugees that came through. And there was a lot of them. They came through walking, they came through on horses, they came through on wagons, trucks, whatever. They came into Germany, and fleeing the Russians that came into overnight into Prague, Czechoslovakia. So that's what, the other part of the military that some of us don't recognize, but full support of the army. The United States is all over the world right now, and a lot of them are just support system. They're not actually necessarily engaged in war, but they are there supporting and representing America and supporting the world. That's about all I want to say. Thank you. I want to thank all the people all the veterans that served, and there's a lot of them. Right now, I'm part of the American Legion in Truchas, and we do a lot of services for the people, like funerals and that kind of stuff, 21-gun salute and that kind of stuff. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Just to kind of piggyback on some of the things Alex was saying, I know that we're focused on community and culture here, but you know, we're all Americans, and so we're, you know, in our community, we all have a strong sense of family, and so given the opportunity to serve in the military also gives us the opportunity to protect our family members as well and our way of life in America. So thank you for those words, Alex. Is there anybody else who would like to come up and speak? All right, we got a line now. Come on up, guys. All right. How you doing?
I don't know if I'm a veteran.
Well, I don't know. You can introduce yourself. You got a strong voice. Here you go.
As I told him, I don't know if I'm a veteran or not. I did wear the uniform for almost 6 years, and I did a lot of time in the air. But I wanted to ask you one question first. How many of you are aware that a nuclear bomb was dropped over New Mexico? And I don't mean the atomic bomb. How many, anybody knew about that? There's a lot of secrets in this country, okay? But a nuclear weapon was drawn from a B-36 just outside Kirtland Air Force Base. But it's been a secret. But it's in books, it's everywhere. So think about that a little bit and say, why is it that we don't tell the truth? I wanted to say something else today because I just learned a few months ago, and I don't recall his first name, but I think it's Albert Roybal, a guy who was about 18 in 1944, went to Italy or somewhere in there, in a landing, apparently was shot. We don't know what happened, but a few months ago, the government came to here in this community center, and what they found is dog tags. A few months ago, this year they found, and the people who found those dog tags came to Penasco and brought them over here, but very few people were told about it. It hurts me. Like me, when I came out of the service, they told me I was not a veteran. And I said, why not? And I said, well, I know it was, things were different, okay? In our outfit, they told us, if you go home, don't wear the uniform. And my mother would tell me, why are you guys killing babies in Vietnam? Well, I didn't go anywhere, but my role was to be in another thing that hardly anybody knows, that the Air Force kept, for 38 and a half years, we kept nuclear-armed bombers around Russia. And I was one of those crazy guys. We would take off from the United States, we fly to the Atlantic, we fly to the North Pole, we fly to Alaska, we fly to the Pacific, and we fly back to the United States. 12,000 miles. And nobody told me. No, and the only thing was that President Kennedy said, you guys will never leave this country unless I approve it. So we were not allowed to go anywhere. But every day, our base, we had 12 bombers in our base, and every day we launched one bomber to fly around Russia. It was what they call part of the tria. We were the air tria. They had planes flying from Europe, planes flying from Asia, planes flying from the United States. Then they had the submarines, and then they had the missiles. But nobody ever mentions it. Nobody said anything. When I came to Penasco, they told me the fire department was basically veterans. And they said, you're not a veteran. And I said, I'm happy to be a veteran or not a veteran, whatever you do. But for the longest time in the fire department, I was a member of the group that were not veterans, had not worn a uniform. But I wanted to share things like this. In here are los veteranos de la Primera Guerra, okay? This picture's a friend of mine, Ray Garcia, found in a trash can in Taos Community Center, the senior center. And he said, he gave them to me. And there's about 200 photos in there. And he said, do something with them. I tried to do something. I took him to the Taos News. I made a copy. First I went to Albuquerque, made 3 sets. I took him to Albuquerque, and nobody wanted them. I took him to the Taos News. They took a copy of them. And then I gave him to Vidabre, Alberto Vidabre. Some of you know him. And he came and wrote this up. He put a little genealogy on each veteran. Some of those guys died in battle. But again, he was only able to produce about 40 of these books because he didn't have the money to do so. He produced actually 5 different books like this. He produced La Familia de los Fresques, and I think Los Gorules, La Gente de Llano, and I'll shut up in a minute. But I also wanted to show you that I have a list here of people from here, a lot of chamisaleños who served in the Civil War. I got this list, and I'm working with another friend of mine to try and get us the people from here who served with the Rough Riders. There are quite a few of them. If Rough Riders got it, one of the people from New Mexico, you know why? Teddy Roosevelt said, I don't care if they speak English, I don't care if they speak Indian, I don't care what they speak. They can ride horses, and that's what I want. And they were part of what they call the Rough Riders. I'm working on a few more groups, but now I'm quite limited, and thank you for being here. It kind of hurts because my mother even told me, why are you guys killing babies? Well, the wrong information gets out. War is war. I never had to do it, but I flew so many missions, 24 hours, that you think about it. It was very extremely exciting with a lot of adrenaline the first few missions, but after a while, it was just plain boring. And then the worst thing about it, in my plane, I couldn't see outside. And I was a navigator. And I would tell people, anybody here knows where we are? I have the right to know.
Thank you, Madroqueo, for giving us some insight. It's easy to focus on recent conflicts, but reality is conflict's been going on since the dawn of man, and to Madroqueo's point, lots of folks from this community throughout time have participated in conflicts, practically every conflict that there's been. And I just want to clarify something as well. I don't want to give folks the impression that the celebration of veterans from the community is just focused on combat vets. It's for anyone that has served in the armed forces. So just want to make sure that we're honoring and recognizing everyone for their service, even if you weren't in a combat role. So thank you for pointing that out, Madroqueo. Anybody else want to come up and share some words? Yes.
How you doing?
How you doing?
All right. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'll introduce myself. Thank you. I'm kind of humbled being here in front of all you veterans. I know you get tired of hearing this, but I'm a combat veteran, okay, from Vietnam, 69, 70, all right? We have to realize that we've been a military unit here since the Spanish first came here, okay? Spanish soldiers, militias. I also have my grandfather's World War II, Civil War, Juan Jose Arguello, who was in the Civil War, and my grandpa Muniz, who was in the Civil War on my mom's side. So Alberto and I did a lot of work on some of that information. But I'm humbled to be here in front of you because, veterans, even more nowadays, are not given the respect they need to be given, Even to the VA, unfortunately, to the VA, we have issues trying to get things done. And sometimes we, kind of on my part, my father was from here, went to World War II. Then we moved to Green River, Wyoming, okay? There's a lot of veterans that were here that moved, and their sons and grandchildren went on to be veterans. One of the men was Jimmy Martinez, my cousin. He was Andres Maria Martinez, who lived here in Llano. He died in Vietnam in '67. He's on the wall, like a lot of the Vietnam veterans. But I'm humbled to be in front of you to let you know that, we have to continue supporting our veterans, okay? Our veterans sometimes are pushed aside. I know the brother on the 9th Infantry over there knew when he came back from Vietnam that he was not treated very well. And I like the way, I feel really proud the way they treat the veterans now when they come home. But there's a lot of healings that still have to be completed, And God only knows that we, as a public, have to realize that veterans need your support. Not just combat veterans, all veterans. We're all brothers together. I'll tell you one thing. If you mess with one veteran, you mess with every veteran, okay? That's the way I feel, okay? You mess with one, you mess with them all. I have the privilege of conducting a my combat unit is going to be in Estes Park. I got about 100 of them going to be there in August. And I just feel, I haven't seen some of these guys in 47 years, okay? And it's going to be good to see them, to see how we've changed from 19-year-olds, not killing babies, but in combat doing our duty, okay? The killing babies has got to stop. You go to World War I, World War II, every war, you've seen what the destruction of a bomb or what happens. It happens in every war, okay? But you know what? When I see these guys that I haven't seen in 47 years, yeah, we're gonna look older. Brother, you know how, the guys you haven't seen in years, you see them, we all look older. But you know what? We still are bonded as brothers. And you veterans, don't let anybody come against you. If they do, you got veterans around you that'll help you. And you know, my last part is this: the wives of these veterans, when they came home, when you married them and you had to take care of them and help them, I want to thank you too, and the mothers, because it's not just the veterans, it's the wives, the parents that have to deal with them when they come back from combat or whatever they've been through in the military. And on behalf of my part, I'd like to thank the wives and the parents. My grandmother, when my dad was with General Patton 3rd Armored Division in Germany, my grandma used to go on her knees, you know, to pray for him from Chima. I'm not sure. She used to tell me she used to get on her knees and pray for him till he'd come home. And that's what we have to do, is continue praying for these veterans. Again, I'm humbled to be here in front of you guys and ladies. And I give all honor and glory to God that He brought us back to continue doing what we had to do in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arguello. Anybody else? Yep.
Yes. You want to go also? Then you want to sit up there?
Hello, everyone. My name is Manuel Trujillo. I feel kind of bad because I didn't submit the names of my family veterans to this presentation, so I thought it was important that I stand up and represent them. Starting with the Trujillo family, Manuel and Rosa Trujillo, they were from here. 6 brothers in the military, 3 Army, 2 Navy, 1 Marine Corps. My uncles in World War II, Salomon, Manuel, Samuel, all in 3 different theaters of war during, during World War II. Salomon was in the Pacific Theater. Manuel was in Germany. He was captured by the Germans, served 8 months POW with the German. My Tio Samuel was, he fought in North Africa, and my dad's half-brother, Jose Muniz, he fought bravely in Italy against the Germans. He received 2 Bronze Stars, and he, excuse me, I'm very emotional about this, but he made it back. He made it back to Penasco only to die in Wyoming as a sheep herder where he froze to death, you know? It's amazing to experience that kind of combat and then to come back and die in the wintertime in Wyoming, of all places. So I thought it was important to recognize them because my grandmother, poor thing, she would, she actually had like these 3, she was a 3-star mother that had 3 sons, and, you know, fighting at the same time during that time. Then later in the Korean War, one of my other uncles, Anselmo, he fought in the Korean War also. So, you know, that's what I'm doing here, to honor these veterans in my family. And that's nothing, you know, if you go back further into the past, you know, one of my progenitors, ancestors from way back, Diego Trujillo, was probably one of the, in the 1600s, he entered with as a soldier, just a common soldier into New Mexico, and he served, during that time. So along the way, we have really no idea what other veterans, besides, as another gentleman mentioned here, during the Civil War, there was also Trujillos and Frescases that were fighting during the Civil War. And when I say the Civil War, they fought right here in Glorieta, and maybe they went, like they said, to Cuba to fight with Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders over there. So we have a proud heritage. And my grandpa would call me a Yoron, but that's the way I've always been. So with that, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Trujillo. And yeah, there's no shame in being emotional about things that you're moved by, right? So we had another gentleman that wanted to come up. No, yeah, right up there. No, come on up.
Hello, vecino, ¿cómo estás?
Bien, bien.
Haven't seen you in a long time. Yes. All right. I didn't plan on speaking here, but I wanted to point out a couple of things. As the role of veterans going by, I noticed a number of Hispanic surnamed, and most of us are Hispanic here, and there are lieutenant colonels, there are majors, there are captains, there are officers in our military from this group of people. I served in Vietnam with Julio Rodarte, with Bill Fresquez, Bobby Romero, Tony Rodarte, and all those people. And in all the time I was there, I met one black officer, and I never met one Hispanic officer of any rank, It's changed, it's better. Let me tell you another little story. When I got to Vietnam, they gave me a job, and it was part of G2 intelligence. I was what is known as a combat historian or a war correspondent. And my job would be to talk to people in intelligence, and they would tell me where major activities were going to be taking place. And they would send me out with a tape recorder and sometimes a camera, and I would talk to the people that were going to take the combat troops out to the field. And they would tell me, this is our destination and this is what we want to accomplish. So I would go and meet with the people that planned the operations to begin with. When they got to the site that they did their work, I'd go back and they'd tell me the number of wounded, the number of killed, information they had gathered, rice they had found, bodies they had found, stuff like that. And then I'd go back to Da Nang, where my place was at. And then at the end of when the group came back to their base, they would have what was called stack arms. And at stack arms, it was one big party, lots of beer and USO shows and drinking and, just like that. But what I wanted to mention about that is shortly after I got to Vietnam, I was sent out by myself to this unit, and my job was to introduce probably someone who was a captain. And I went into this tent, and they had like a little, not an office really, but they had a little desk there. And I went to talk to this captain, and this captain looked at me, and he told me, "Marine, how did you get this job?" And you know what I told him? The Marine Corps, in its wisdom, sir, has given me this job. And that shut him up. But that's the military that we served in. That's the military we served in. The only officers I knew when I was in high school was Keo Marduqueo, biology, chemistry teacher, Chacon. And his brothers. Those were the only examples we had. But now I'm glad that we have a lot more people here that have accomplished those goals and become officers in our military. Thank you. Good day.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Does anyone else want to share some stories? Did you chicken out? Okay.
Good evening to all of you. My name is Emmanuel Manny Pacheco. I am a veteran of the United States Air Force. I was asked by one of my fellow veterans here to request that we have a moment of silence for those veterans that are still out there and for those veterans that have never returned, such as my primo that you saw here, Henry Pacheco, in 1944. He was missing in action. But before they do that, I want to comment from the other side. Because I was in the military, I was able to get a very good, solid education. Thanks for that. I will not speak to my military career, but I was there. But I will say that because of that education that I got, I was able to go back and work for the Veterans Administration as a clinical therapist. The point that I'm making here, that a lot of veterans, I worked specifically with Vietnam vets, but this happened with veterans from every war. It might have been called combat fatigue or war neurosis, but we call it post-traumatic stress disorder. The veterans that came back that were suffering from PTSD, that went to the Veterans Administration to seek relief, were not recognized as having a particular problem. The veterans, the government did not want to recognize that there's such a thing existed. You would have opened, and it did open, a Pandora's box. When they finally did, for many it was already too late. They were dead. It not only impacted the veterans after they came back, but the families suffered a lot as well. And the unfortunate thing is that when they came back and they went to get help from the very government that sent them to the war, they were not given that help that they needed. They turned to drugs, alcohol, and other means just to cope and just to survive. So when I got to see the veterans and their families, and let me tell you, there were many from the Penasco Valley. I chose to work with this population. And I might just add that New Mexico has been overrepresented in every war. But getting back to PTSD, when they finally came to us in the Vietnam Veterans Outreach Program that was started in many years after the war, they already had two major diagnoses of drug abuse, drug dependence, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And I just wanted to share that with you because I know that there are veterans out there right now from Vietnam, from Korea, World War II, World War I, we didn't hear anything. But a lot of people are still out there hurting. A lot of people have not even received the help that they need. Because part of what the veterans did, they isolated themselves. They were afraid to go out in public. The families did not even know what was going on. They also suffered tremendously. A lot of our Vietnam vets, probably to this very day, have a gun under their pillow. A lot of Vietnam vets still do the perimeter walk. I just wanted to share that with you. It was not all fun and games. After they came back to a society that was very negative, that called them, baby killers, women killers, and so on and so forth, how would you feel landing here and getting spit on? Thank you very much. Thank you, Vietnam vets. Thank all of you.
So just to piggyback on that, as folks share their stories and, as we start thinking about these things, more and more names come to mind, more and more stories come to mind. And I'd encourage everyone to share those with Kari and also on the website, www.penasconm.org, and it's on the pamphlet here. So there's information there if you guys want to get involved and continue building the list and the list of names and the photos. I think that's a really great way to commemorate those that have come before us, So, and speaking of those that have come before us, just to kind of piggyback on what the gentleman was talking about before, different conflicts have had different reactions by the community and things of that nature. So, would like to pay homage to all of those that have come before us and have paved the way for multi-generational change. It's because of their efforts and their initiatives and their leadership that things are better for Hispanic veterans today. So thank you all very much for